Don Cooney is absent and Ben may be late. Patrice Griffin,
Here.
Kim Hollers,
Present.
Bobby's absent. Brenda is absent right now. Sakia Lee,
Present.
Shalana Lewis,
Present.
Carol McGlynn,
Here.
Tim Reddy,
Here.
Alyssa Stewart.
Present.
Okay. So the first order is the approval of the regular minutes. And Kevin sent those out. So did people have a chance to look at those, and do we want to take them? Okay, so all in favor of approving the October 5th minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the minutes pass. The next would be approval of the agenda. And currently we have the meeting schedule and then Sbk funding guidelines and subcommittee formation. Is there any changes to the agenda? Okay, just maybe raise of hands. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, the agenda passes. There are no reports of officers, boards, and committees, so we'll move on to new business. We have the 2021 meeting schedule. Kevin, is that something you could share?
Yeah, so just agreeing on when this body wants to meet. I need to send that to the city clerk's office so they can post it. If you want to maintain this, I could just make sure they know that, and then it could be posted for public consumption.
So is there any opposition to keeping it it's the first Monday?
Correct.
First Monday, correct? Any
Yes.
opposition of keeping that same schedule? So then I think, Kevin, you can get something out. I think the only thing that when we were looking at it is just double checking about spring break in April. But otherwise, I think that should go pretty smoothly.
All right.
Do you need any kind of approval for that, or is it just something you can?
I don't think I need
Okay.
any approval.
All right. So the next item is the Sbk Funding Guidelines. Did everybody have a chance to look at the guidelines? So basically what we're trying to do here is we're trying to move our process forward so that we can get to the point of granting out funds. That guideline gave specific dates where we would be asking for letter of intent, and then moving on the process so that the granting process would be done by April with decisions made during that time. And then the guidelines really lay out, what we're looking for. Obviously, we're going for a 2-gen approach here, targeting at our neighborhoods, east side, north side, east side, and then, in the areas of jobs, families, and youth. Are there any questions on the guidelines? Kevin has talked about, we do have something ready that he's been working on with United Way so that we actually have a very specific application process, letter of intent, so that we will have an opportunity to look at what people are, the ideas that are out there in the community. And then also if there's ways that, we can connect different organizations together to strengthen grants And then, and we can talk a little bit about how we get that word out. Certainly January is going to be really important that we're getting that word out to grassroots organizations, to our nonprofits and stuff. So any questions on that?
Couple questions. So one is on the first page, or towards the front of the first page. There's just a couple blanks. So there's, a range of funds and things like that are just blank as placeholders. And so I was curious if the ask is for this group to help inform that. So just had a question mark there. And my second question was that this references a application review committee. And so I just was hoping for some clarity from Kevin of what will make up and constitute that committee that's playing a key role.
Right.
I think both of those questions are part of the next item on the agenda under that in terms of the subcommittee. So this is a draft. We will still have to finalize it. It's some time we have to finalize it. But that's where we would get it, some of those issues you raised up.
Well, and Kevin, can you just kind of let everybody know like where we stand with the funds we have available? And then, and I guess the question is too, it's not like, I don't know, part of me says, I'm not sure that we need to include that amount in this granting guideline. Maybe that's the decision that we make once grants come in, and but at least so the committee understands like where we're at right now.
In terms of the document that was sent out?
No, in terms of the dollars available.
It's roughly $1 million or so left that are available.
Right.
And again, we discussed various ways to allocate those. The guidelines document I sent out kind of tries to hone in on building out that 2Gen piece that we've been discussing.
Tim.
Kevin, $1 million over what period of time?
That's to be determined. So as everybody knows, the first funds we got came from FFE. If we're looking to make an ask again, we have to do that next year for 2022 is my understanding.
So is it fair to say that these are 2021 funds?
Yes.
So
just as
I guess my question is, there's a reference to at the start of this document to 2-year funding period. I guess, does that $1 million does not cover that entire 2-year period, but we had the expectation that there would be sufficient funds later? Is that the idea?
So it could be both and. I mean, depending on how it was distributed, it could potentially cover up to 2 years. I know Laura Land was beginning to say something. She's part of the FFE staff and could probably provide a little bit more clarification on that.
Sure, just to clarify, and I think you put this in your memo, Kevin, that the $2 million was initially allocated in 2019. And so what we've done is carried those funds forward. As they're not used, they get carried forward. So the roughly a little over $1 million that Kevin spoke to would be carried forward until it's exhausted. And then what Kevin also described, just to reinforce, is that we go through an annual process, really starting in the summer each year, where we solicit ideas that are aligned with Imagine Kalamazoo, sort of through our departments and strategic partners, to then inform requests for Foundation for Excellence funding for the following budget year. So to that point, I think that the importance, I think, of this conversation is, with money that's been allocated and we're now kind of moving into the third year, is sort of demonstrating the recognition of how these funds can be impactfully invested to advance the shared prosperity kind of vision and mission that really bodes well for any future funding consideration, kind of demonstrating the need and the ways in which this group, this body, this mission is helping us to address that. And
that's certainly the reason that we want to really move forward and get going on these grants so that, we can, provide some backup of, the effectiveness of the grants. Tim?
There's reference, it seems to go back and forth in the document, referring to high impact funds and SBK funds. Are those meant to be synonymous?
The high impact fund is just what we had named, just the overall allocation. We could change the name though.
So, for example, other things that have been, other expenditures that have been made, which, the city has done, which I'm fine with. For example, I think that there was assistance provided to victims of flooding a year or so ago, which I understood to be high impact funds. Was that from the same kitty, so to speak? I'm just trying to understand what's what.
I don't think we assisted victims of flooding through the high impact fund.
No, if I can interject again, we did have from the SBK High Impact Fund, we had $250,000 earlier this year that went towards disaster relief fund that was supporting our community response to COVID.
Right.
So certainly that was dollars that came out of the initial $2 million SBK High Impact Fund. That is, I believe, the only piece that we've talked about that really sort of went, I guess, outside of this group's purview.
Any other questions? I think, Tim?
Sorry, is this document or a version of this meant to be distributed to potential, applicants with this language? And the reason I ask is the reference to 2-gen programming. And, I think I'm certainly on board with the concept, and I think we've agreed to it. I'm just wondering about the language, whether that's going to be language that is comprehensible to the public, or whether it's going to be a little hard to get. It's explained, but still, I'm just wondering about that. And one final question that's kind of a different question to just put on the table, and then I'll let somebody else talk. With the COVID right now, and people, a lot of people out of work, particularly in the service industry, and other people, kids home from, not being able to go to school, I suppose. I'm thinking, and I'm, some of you would know far better than I, that there's probably a lot of people who are really hurting right now. And whether or not that fits in 2-gen programming, I'm wondering if that $250,000 allocation for COVID is, needs to be supplemented, and any short-term funding that we do might really be better spent looking at this emergency. And I just put that on the table.
Mm-hmm. So in order to move things forward, I think one of the things we could do is we can not put a dollar amount on this document, take the dollar amount out. But that would allow us to, and I agree on the 2-gen terminology, like trying to just make that a little bit more user-friendly, maybe to, I do think many nonprofits are understanding it more because it is a language that is happening in the community. So that's true, but maybe for some of the grassroots or efforts and stuff, that would be tricky. So if we could, possibly approve these guidelines with the understanding that we're going to make a little bit clearer or user-friendly, the 2-gen wording, and then also that we will not include a specific amount of dollars granted out. But, I think it's pretty important at this point that we move forward with with getting this rolling and getting the guidelines going. Does anybody have anything to add to that? I see we have Bobby on, so that's good. So I guess if there's no other questions, we would need a motion to approve the guidelines. Oh, I'm sorry, Patrice has something.
Thank you. Really quickly, thank you for all the work that got put into this document. I think it is very helpful and it puts things together, and I'm very appreciative of wanting to move things forward quickly, but in a quality way. The only question that I have is about who all can apply for this funding, being just a 501c3 organizations. And I just have some questions about maybe programs or services that are aimed at generational, that, you know, get at systems change, that don't necessarily have the 501c3. Is there space for them to receive funding through SBK, or what were the thoughts, or was that brought up at all?
We've talked about that, and certainly. Oh, Bobby, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Vice Mayor, they really need to be a 501c3. I mean, you can't, I shouldn't say can't, but if someone that doesn't have a 501c3, if they want to get a fiduciary or something, that can happen, but we really should stick with the 501c3.
Right. And I think that's the way that they could do that, would be through getting a fiduciary. And we certainly, Alyssa, you could probably add on to that, but we could probably get them information about how you would get a fiduciary.
Yeah, I was actually just going to say, I would just make that clear in the guidelines document then, that, and we do have some language, and I'm sure the Community Foundation does too, of basically a 501c3 501c3, or you have a 501c3 serving as your fiduciary. So I think just tweaking that line in the guidelines could make that feel more clear to Patrice's.
Okay.
Carol, I'm sorry, before we move to approve, I'm still a little unclear on who is determining about the approval, the application review committee.
Okay.
Approving that without understanding who that is, I want to make sure or is that to be decided? And if so, who's deciding that?
Right. So actually it's the next piece on the agenda item, but so the executive committee, when we talked about this, we thought it makes sense if the entire committee agrees that it would be better to have a subcommittee that would be able to look at the LOIs and to do a little bit more of the elimination of projects if they don't meet the criteria, so that that we can move it forward. We'd want to draw that from this committee, and then also maybe they would have a first look at the grants coming in, and so that if there were any questions, or they would come back to the grantees and say, we have some questions about this. But ultimately, the entire board would approve the grants that would be awarded. Does that make sense to people?
Yes.
Okay. Then do we want to make a motion to approve the guidelines with the caveat that at this time we will not put a dollar amount on, so that portion would be taken out, Kevin?
All right.
Would be clarification on the 2-gen approach to make it a little bit more user friendly.
And the fiduciary piece.
And the fiduciary piece.
Carol, there's a message in the chat from Antonio that says Brenda Hughes raised her hand. Is that what you're saying, Antonio? I think it came up a couple of times.
I'm sorry, what?
Antonio, you want to say, are you sending something in the chat?
No.
Okay. I kept seeing something in the chat that says somebody's raising their hand.
Oh, huh.
Okay. Guess it's just mine.
See a chat. I don't know.
I know now the chat is gone, so I don't know what happened. Okay.
Okay.
All right. It's fine.
Okay, so is everybody comfortable with the what the motion would, I would need somebody to make the motion that we have on the table.
I
So
make the
moved.
motion. Oh,
Zakia made it.
All right, and a second.
Support. Hopewell.
All right, is there any other discussion?
I'm sorry, I do have a thought, but it doesn't affect my support for it. It's more of just, I want it to be noted, I guess. I would love for these documents to be available in other languages for accessibility, but that also raises a question about, would there be support on the back end? The grant system that the city is using in partnership with United Way has the ability to convert the application to Spanish and French. But I would be curious, if we received an application in Spanish, for example, would we have the supports on the back end to translate it back for an English speaking committee? So a back end thing, but I just want to put that out there because I do think accessibility wise, that would be an important thing for the city team to consider.
Dorla, can you answer that question?
Not at this minute. I can find out. I understand what you're asking.
Yeah, it makes sense to have it translated. Of course, we can do that and should do that. And then how we handle it on the back end, we'll work with city staff to figure out how to work that. And it may be working with Celio or other groups, but we can make it happen.
Yeah, very good point. Any other discussion? Okay, so all in favor of approving the funding guidelines, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Kevin, did you get that? And
Yeah.
opposed?
aye, I'm finally in.
Hi, Brenda. Opposed? Okay, the guidelines are approved. Yay. Okay, next is to talk about the subcommittee format. This was suggested by the executive committee to have a subcommittee that would review LOIs and then also once the initial grants come in, to review those, ask questions, get clarification, etc. And we're thinking approximately, Bobby, what do you think, like 4 people on that committee? Or oh, you're on mute.
Should be an odd number, so 3 to 5, somewhere 3 or 5. So anyone interested would be a question.
Right.
We did have some thinking around some folks that have background in reviewing grants, hint to a couple of you, but we a lot of laughs at me. But anyway.
I did have a question. We had some other committees. I was on a subcommittee around public policy, I think, like at some point. And I was just curious if those would continue, because that makes a difference, my time and capacity wise, if we're gonna if any of the old subcommittees would continue as we move forward.
Yeah.
I think those are ad hoc committees. So at this point, right now, they will only continue if the group wanted them to continue.
So our thinking was the co-chairs plus 2 was what I think our original thinking. Is that right? Okay, so Brenda, you're interested. I see another hand or her hand. Carol, I'm not trying to take over. I'm just trying to.
No, you go for it.
I'm happy to help if needed.
Okay. Kim, what were you saying? Oh, yeah. Well, you're a co-chair, so we got you already.
Quick question, and I don't want to contradict or question the executive committee's, just another thought. One thing that I really love about the funding guidelines is that it really centers community and asks that proposals be brought forward that are informed by community voice and members of the neighborhoods. And so I'm curious, I want to just take a moment to sort of check, I guess, ourselves against that same expectation, that from just this existing group, do we feel like we have the community voice and representation that we would want on that committee? Or would having, not necessarily, a huge group, but would having some additional voices be helpful? Or
So one, I hear you, but I really think we got to move. We've been diving into this work and back and forth on how to make stuff happen. And I think at least for 2021, we need to appoint the committee of the committee or subcommittee of the committee of this committee. And then, if we want to make adjustments as we go, but for 2021, we really need to move.
Well, and I do think that, we did a lot with shared prosperity and getting input from the community on needs and, areas. I do think that one thing that we could do in January, and Alyssa, I'm sure this is something you would agree with, is, having some sort of community forums to talk about, like,
oh yeah, we did talk
the word out about these grants availability, so that we can try to bring more people to the table than, kind of the usual suspects. So, I think that's something that we could definitely plan to do in January. As in the guidelines, our LOIs are due February 12th. So we really have to jump to, make sure that people have time to do that. Hopefully the LOI is not going to be hugely time consuming for people, but I think it's going to be important to get that message out in January.
So I do just want to say, Alyssa, I think that is a really good point. What I would hope would happen of the committee that's reviewing grants, that people could reach out into the community as best as they can to get that feedback, because you're right, we do need to move, quickly, but we also need to make sure we're moving in the right way. And we won't know that we're moving in the right way unless we have community, because we don't want to create the situation where we're fixing things for you. And even with 501c3, even with having fiduciary, there's still going to be a certain amount of the same players that we see. And I think that this group and what we're trying to do is really move the needle, and we have the capacity to do so, but we can't move so fast that we forget about community. So I agree, we definitely need to get this going now so we can set it in motion, but that is my hopes, that's something that happens.
Well, one, we can also, that needs to be a requirement of those that are coming forward, applying for these grants, what's been their work, what's been their dive in, along with the work that we've done previously. And Vice Mayor, I don't think you have to worry about this group moving fast, because I don't know when we have. So it's interesting, a word with us, but that's okay. We're doing the work that's deep and dark and light and bright and all of that stuff. So anyway.
Lana, yes.
Hi, sorry, my internet booted me out for just a second, so I missed something, but I wanted to just say that I think some sort of community engagement opportunity, it would be great. And I think it's even so much easier in some ways. I know that there's some folks that aren't as comfortable with technology, but if we can do some, there might be some really good touch points. So much has changed in our community since we did the engagements. And so it might be good to just have a touch point and see what communities' priorities are. But I do think we know, and I know that there was a lot of intention behind who was on the goal teams and even who was on this committee in terms of representing different neighborhoods. So I don't know if that might be a part of the process to touch base with some of the folks that we already kind of have involved on some level, or were involved in the last year or two.
I was wondering if it would make sense, since we are only going to serve 501c3 unless the person has a fiduciary, if we would have a list of organizations who would agree to be fiduciaries that those folks can reach out to, because if that's not how they normally operate and you're working on this timeline, it could help kickstart them or jumpstart their response. I don't know who those folks will be, but I know some of you all. I only know a few, should I say. But that, I think if you have the engagement, as part of that engagement, if you had a list of folks who would agree to be fiduciaries that you've talked to, it would help.
As far as fiduciaries, I know that can be a very challenging thing for many groups, is to A, find one, and B, manage the relationship. And for the organizations that are willing to do it, also having the administrative capacity. I think a lot of our nonprofits just have very limited administrative capacity already as it is. And so this is something that we've been exploring at the Community Foundation, is if we can invest and build in an organization that one of 2 or 3 core purposes would be to provide fiscal sponsorship for startup, grassroots types of efforts. And so that's something that we've been exploring for a while. And I know that there was some folks involved with designing something. I think Matt Leckel, Mia Henry, and some others a while back, but it's something that we're hoping to really get off the ground in the next year. And that might be actually something that could really benefit the core neighborhoods and really benefit SBK to actually invest in that infrastructure capacity in our community. Might be something this committee would be interested in too. So, but it's, like I said, it's something that is hopefully going to be underway in the next early part of 2021.
So getting back to our committee. So Bobby, you're talking Kim, Ben, and Skia would be on it, correct? Were those the 3 you were talking about? Hey, we're not hearing you.
My computer just mutes itself on its own. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, those are the co-chairs, but we also had Brenda raise her hand is interested, and Lana say possibly would be interested, and that would be 5 left. That would be 5 if we went with that group, or anybody else. Good people, we love having you work.
Right. So we have 5. Is that a good? Is everybody of the 5 good with it? And
going once, going twice? No.
Right. Okay, then I think that's the subcommittee.
We should probably do it by motion.
Okay. So the subcommittees, Kevin, you have the names of the 5?
Yes.
Right. And so all in favor of our...
I'll make a motion for
I'm sorry.
To support the 5 individuals as indicated.
Yep. Support?
Supported by Brenda.
Okay. And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. All right. Well, it sounds like we have a lot of work cut out for ourselves and moving forward, but that's great. So do we want to talk about January and the you know, community meetings and how to get those kind of things set up? I mean, I know certainly they've been happening a lot in the community with different funding partners and stuff. So this isn't, I don't think this is surprising, but we definitely would need to figure out what that looks like. And
does someone have a template? United Way have a template, or Community Foundation have a template for doing this, that we don't have to overthink it or something?
Yeah, I think it could look a couple ways too. So in the sense that I think there might be two distinct needs. There could be like a feedback and Q&A, but we should also have some set time for actual like technical assistance for people who are seeking, right? So I just want to be clear. So yeah, for like the technical assistance piece, sure, we have some like PowerPoints and other stuff that could be helpful to just say like, this is what we normally share in a Q&A or technical assistance session with potential grantees. We'd be happy to share that. I'm sure the Community Foundation does as well. So yeah, I think it's just being clear about which purpose, which is serving. I'd also just say, whatever we do, let's be sure we're flexible about when it's happening, and probably even recording those sessions so that we could even distribute them to people on their own time if they can't make our set meetings. But I would say probably maybe offering 3 to 4, you know, hour-long sessions where people could come and get questions answered about what we're looking for and how to access the application would be great if we could do that.
And, you know, I don't know, getting back to the needs piece, I mean, what do we think about having a forum within the neighborhoods?
Well, I'm not sure we're going to be having any forums in any neighborhoods. I think
I mean, it's all going to be Zoom.
Yeah.
It's all going to be Zoom.
We can be neighborhood specific, certainly, and do some of those things, but.
So I guess the question is that something that we're putting on the committee, the subcommittee that we just formed, or is this something that the executive committee is taking on to try to get those forums arranged in January?
And I have another question with that, Carol. Is the meeting the same as your outreach to people so they know that if application process is coming, or is it a step in your outreach? Does that make sense?
So,
you know, how are you going to let people know? The first thing that is what's your marketing process to let people know that and who's getting it, and then you will do, you know, the training after people.
Right. Agreed. Yeah, I think that those are two different, you know, kind of workshops or whatever. One would be to get the word out, but maybe that's more of a communication piece than an actual forum piece.
Because I think that's going to be important. And if you want to try to get the folks who are not the regulars, and to try to include folks, especially those that are not 501c3, so they can be informed on how to apply and that they need a fiduciary, then you're going to have to do a different type of outreach than we normally do, or else we'll get what we've always gotten. So then I think we need to spend some time thinking about who do we want to send this out to, what kind of list does everybody, who has a list that is more diverse than what we normally have. And then you can start talking about the training. Or you would put your list out. I know when we do this with our federal funds, when we put the outreach out, then we also list the days of the training.
Right. Kevin, did you have any thoughts about that?
I think it's something to be discussed between executive and the review committee to plan that out.
Okay.
Considering it wasn't on the agenda and it just came up this way, we should probably discuss that online to plan out details, or offline, I should say.
Okay. Okay. Then we'll move on to public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We had a miscellaneous.
Oh, I'm sorry, miscellaneous. Is there anything under miscellaneous?
No, I wanted to alert the committee on something. So if you all aren't aware, we had an MOU between the city of Kalamazoo and Western, specifically with Lou Walker Institute being the conduit to Western Michigan University. And it was previously a document that was signed by former mayor, former ED of Lou Walker Institute, and the president of Western. Since then, obviously, we got a new mayor. Lou Walker Institute has gotten a new ED, and the new ED is interested in revising that MOU and working with the city in terms of Western. And so Dorla and myself with the new ED, Dr. Luchara Wallace, have been working on revising that MOU between the city and Western and expanding it. The previous document was kind of SBK heavy. We're expanding it to be more city organization focused with some SBK elements in there. So I just wanted everybody to know that that's in motion right now. We have a draft document that I could send to everybody just to get a feel for the specifics, but just wanted to put that on everybody's radar.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay, then we'll go to public.
Oh, sorry, I have one more thing. Sorry,
Yep.
Carol. I just wanted to share, since I meant to update this group regardless, because it's happened since we met last, but just wanted to alert everyone, and this kind of connects with what Dr. Reddy shared earlier, or brought up around the $250,000 allocation that SBK made previously. I just wanted to close the loop that allocation was spent in our first, invested in the community in the first activation of United Way's Disaster Relief Fund and the Kalamazoo Community Foundation's Community Urgent Relief Fund, our joint effort. A few weeks ago, we reactivated. So we have started a second phase of COVID-19 relief funding. And so I just wanted to make everyone aware of that there is currently an application process that is open for emergency supports related to COVID-19. So make that aware, share that. We've seen huge demand. This also kind of touches on what Dr. Reddy was asking about. In the last week and a half, we've received 31 applications totaling $1.5 million in requests, which is much more than we have to grant. So just wanted to share that that is happening. We are seeing great need in the community related to this ongoing reality of COVID, coupled with the Michigan winter that we are entering into. And that always causes its own basic needs challenges for our community. So just wanted to lift that up. If anyone has questions, happy to answer those at United Way or the Community Foundation.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Alyssa. That was great. I'm not directly involved with this effort, but I know my team members are. And I just wanted to add that for this round, we're being a little bit more broad for urgent relief in terms of thinking about anything emergency relief, recovery, restoration for sudden and unanticipated natural, economic, and man-made crisis. So that's a little bit beyond just COVID. And we are considering things that relate to racial injustice as well. And so the idea, I think, at least for us, and I can't speak for the United Way, but at least for us, is that we know that the way we look at different crises, depending on who's impacted, might not always garner the same response. And so we wanted to be a little bit more broad about when a crisis only impacts a segment of our community, we still need to make those resources available, right? And so because we have a fund set up where we can continue to fundraise on an ongoing basis, so that there is some funds there available as things arise. So it's not just for COVID-19, although we, obviously are still living with that and anticipating that will be a lot of what we see.
Thank you. Any other, Patrice?
Just really quickly, thank you both for lifting that up, but how can people access that? What do they call, or is there a website?
Both of our websites. So this is a little different than the first activation. The first activation, they had to talk with someone. It's open this time. So we're trying to make it as open, as accessible as possible. The application, it's one single application to make it streamlined and easy. And people can access it either at United Way's website, changethestory.org, or at the Kalamazoo Community Foundation's website. They both have links that take you right to the application.
And you can also, of course, we're always fundraising for this, but yeah, there is the information I can share. I guess there's not a chat. I wanted to share too that for TRHT, we had some updates, and we had been working on thinking about how to offer resources directly to community this year especially. And I've been working with Dr. Kinlana Ferguson and Kama Mitchell and some other folks involved with TRHT and help to seed a Black and Brown Therapy Collective. Essentially, it's all about connecting therapists of color to community residents of color. We do have a small fund for covering costs for those who aren't insured. But for those who are insured, the clinicians that we're working with can see them in their office and bill accordingly. We're just providing a resource network and trying to get the word out, especially for those who are on the ground and doing some kind of direct service that are directly involved with folks who are going through very traumatic events related to deaths and shootings and things like that, that we have somebody there that can help kind of connect the dots. So that's starting at Rooted. Really excited about it. We're hiring a coordinator now. So, so yeah, let me know if you have questions about that.
Great. Any other miscellaneous?
No more miscellaneous, but Lana, is there an age range for the therapy services? No? Okay, thank you.
No age range. Obviously, the clinicians that it's more of a referral resource. So clinicians obviously have to, I think, get parental consent when working with youth. So that's all handled through whatever clinician would be involved. So.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, any other miscellaneous? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment. Do we have any public comment?
There's no public comments at this time.
Okay, then we're at adjournment. So thanks everybody. Productive meeting. We're moving forward. Excited about that. We'll get more information in the next few weeks about January, and appreciate everybody's time. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay.